So what are we now? 2.5 months away from the draft this year. You have now checked in with us a couple of different times. You did it in the preseason. You did it in midseason with Nebraska's players.
Yeah.
When you think back now to that conversation you had with John in August versus today, how much, big picture first, how much has changed with the prospects of these guys?
I thought that maybe Nebraska could have, at least for the last 20 years, an historic draft. I thought they could get up into maybe 6, 7, 8. If everybody played up to their potential with the size and measurements they were going to put out there, with I thought the kind of potential they would have, with some of the veterans on the offensive line and all the starts, I thought they could have maybe 8 guys get drafted.
Wow.
And that would be, for the last 25 years in this program, pretty damn good.
Yes, it would.
When you have years with 1 and 2 and 3. Matter of fact, the last time they had more than 3 was 2016. Last time they had more than 4 was 2011. Of course, the last time they had a first-rounder as well. Now, they're not going to have a first-rounder this year.
No.
But I do believe they're going to have a lot of mid-rounder guys.
Okay.
A lot of mid-rounder guys. So when we did the mid-season, this is kind of pretty close to what I thought with the mid-season.
Okay.
Although a couple of guys I thought maybe would be a round or 2 higher.
Let me ask you this. What did you think about the Tommy Hill conversation? Because I'm trying to rack my brain for when you talked about it with John.
Yeah.
Because there was the mock draft that came out. Was it right before or right at the beginning of the season?
They had him at 31,
yes.
32. Yeah.
Did you view him as that type of player?
No, I never thought of him. See, I don't believe, and I may be wrong about this, I don't think he's going to run a great time.
Okay.
And if you don't run a great time, I don't care how good your tape is, and his tape isn't as good as others, you're going to drop in the draft. They've been guys who are really good NFL quarterbacks who run in the 4.5s, who automatically, like, either you're going to be a safety or you're not going to be a corner. I don't think he's a 4.4 guy. He doesn't look like it to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he goes and trains and he gets healthy. Now he's hurt again.
Yeah.
He had his best day at the Senior Bowl on Thursday, and he got hurt the same day and had to leave. So if he can get healthy by the combine and he runs in the low 4.4s, high 4.3s, it'll shock me at his size. But if he does that, then it's a whole different conversation. I just think he looks like a 4.5 guy.
So you mentioned some of the most recent years. 2016, they had 4. 17-1, 18-1, 19, of course, was the first year in decades that they had 0. And then since then, 2, 2, 3, and 2. If you're setting an over-under on the number of Huskers picked in this year's NFL draft, what's the range that we're looking at?
I would go 3.5 for a good over-under.
Wow. So quite the drop from where you thought it could be before
from what
the
I
season.
thought it could be. Now, so I still think Ty Robinson is probably first, but I think Ty, and I know a lot of people are talking about first, second, third. I think Ty is a 4th-round guy. Okay. Now, I do this off the numbers, right? Because I'm a numbers guy. In general, each year, you have about 12, sometimes 14 defensive linemen that go in the first 2 days, which is first round, second round, third round, right? So that's what we're looking at. Okay. He is ranked by most services between 14 and 16.
So pretty much right at the edge, if not beyond it.
Beyond it. Now, also, you got to separate these guys into defensive ends and defensive tackles. So we'll get to Nash later. He's more of a nose tackle. He fits into that group. So you put some pass rushers in there, like an Abdul Carter, who doesn't always get listed as defensive lineman, but in general, he is. So that changes it as well. You got 8 defensive tackles, 8 guys that are like Ty. He is the 9th of those guys. Guys that are like him. We're talking about 3 techniques, or guys who maybe play the shade, but they're not a 1 and they're not a 5. So if you're talking about those guys, he's ranked 9th among those guys. In general, the 8 that are before him are going to go in the first 2 days.
So he is at the bottom.
He's right at the end. So I think he's a round 4 guy. Since 2018, 9 defensive linemen a year have been drafted that don't include those random nose tackles.
Okay.
Because you got to take those out because they don't fit in what he is. And when they go, they usually go because there's a team that plays that type of 3-4 that needs that one guy, like a Baltimore Ravens. Right?
Sure.
So I think he's a 4th-round guy, mainly because he's an older player. Right, he's not young.
And he's an older player at that position.
At that position, he's an older guy. And the fact that when you're not on a team that wins a lot, you don't get watched as much. And so, yes, they go back and watch your tape and they see how you did the Senior Bowl and he had a good week in the Senior Bowl. I thought in terms of the game, he played really well. He had great push. That whole defensive line for the team that Ty was on dominated the game. And so I thought he played well. Maybe he goes to the combine and has an amazing combine. I don't know. But right now, it's like a 4th-round pick based off of the numbers.
By the way, going back to the total that you said, Clarence says, you mean 3.5, not 3.5 on the
yes.
Nice. 3.5.
So he is the first player.
Yep.
He is the highest-ranked player.
Yep.
So he's number 2.
Yep. Thomas Fidone. Okay, this is why. Okay, understand this. It is a loaded tight end draft. Okay. But when it's loaded like that, a lot of those guys get pushed up because as soon as the run starts, people are like, I got to grab me a tight end. I have to grab me a tight end That means the guys who are a little bit lower in the group and
rising tides lift all boats.
Exactly. So Thomas is going to have the medicals, first of all, how they go, right? Will his medicals be good enough for everybody to have him on their board? Because it might not be. With the medicals he has, just based off of having 2 ACLs and other injuries, he might be taken off a guy's board.
Some teams are just going to say no.
Wouldn't have him on the boards at all.
Interesting.
His hands are great, but we know about his blocking.
Bad.
Even in the Senior Bowl, he had 4 or 5 times where he had a chance to technically get between himself, the guy, and the ball, and he couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. He still struggles with that.
You think that's want to?
I believe it's want to, because he's big enough. I think he's strong enough. I don't know if he goes into it with the thing of, I got to dominate this guy blocking him, like a lot of other guys do. Yeah. You've got 6, without a doubt, first 2-day tight ends.
Okay.
Warner, Fannin. Fannin is a great athlete. Colston Loveland out of Michigan. Mm-hmm. You got Gunnar Helm. You got Mason Taylor, who played at LSU, who's, he's the son, and Elijah Aurora out of Miami. Average 14 tight ends drafted a year. I think all those guys are going to go the first 2 days.
Okay. So 1 through 3 rounds.
Yep. And then from 4 to 7, I think that Thomas could fit in there somewhere. Maybe as high as the 5th round if he tests well.
I was going to say, what kind of speed are we looking at?
I think in terms of long speed, because how long his legs are, he's not going to have a great 10. But I think he can get into the high 4.6s. Like, I think he can maybe get to 4.69, 4.7. If he gets there at that size, matter of fact, one of the people I read about, they called him a pterodactyl.
I think it looks like a giraffe.
Because he's not, I don't think he looks like a giraffe in terms of on ice, like a young giraffe. This is an older giraffe.
Seasoned giraffe.
Seasoned giraffe.
Yeah.
But because of how long his arms are, and he's got like a wingspan of a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think he is probably a 5th round pick.
Okay.
Then I got Tommy Hill. Again, medicals, been hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Interviews. I don't know if Tommy's going to interview great.
Yeah.
Tommy's got his share of issues. Right? They're going to ask him about some stuff that maybe wasn't reported in the news that happened to him that they're going to know about because they find out about everything. Dairy Queen always finds out. So they're going to find out. Right? So if he gets a combine invite and he runs well, like I said, he could shock me. But I think he is probably a 6th round pick.
Okay, so he's number 3. And so this is now the line of, will there be another one or will there not be another one?
So 55 plus DBs drafted each of the last 3 years. Tons of DBs go. Oh, yeah. Remember, though, more than a third of them are safeties.
Sure.
So if he goes, here's your other guy, Nash Hutmaker.
Okay.
Nose tackle. I said earlier, 6 or 7 nose tackles in those first 3 days. First 2 days. First 3 rounds.
First 3 rounds.
Right. He's ranked 14th for nose tackles. Okay. 24 defensive tackles drafted between 2024 and 23. So if somebody looks at him and goes, maybe at his size, he can play 3 technique and not just nose, maybe that moves him up. I think there's a better chance he's an undrafted free agent, but I wouldn't be shocked if somebody looked at that tape and said, I need a 0. He's my 0. It's the 7th round. I'm taking him.
What hurts him in terms of falling out of the draft?
I don't know he's explosive enough. He's not the traditional size of most of the nose. He's not a 6'3", 330 guy. He's not that. He lost that weight to go wrestle, and I don't think he ever got to that size again, in my opinion. Maybe he does during the offseason, but he wants to keep that quickness he has. The only thing I could say is that, again, when you play on a team that doesn't win a lot, they don't necessarily like you as much. It's very strange. If you go back and look at the 7th round and you start seeing who gets taken,
it's a lot of those teams that win.
And guys who were 5 stars or 4 stars that never had a great career in college, who they go, let's take chances on them.
For sure.
That happens a lot. That happened that year that Stanley Morgan was sitting there and they kept taking wide receivers. Like, why is not Stanley? Because Stanley was on a 4-win team.
Yeah.
That's why. The other chances you have, Isaiah Nayor. I know people will laugh. I know he dropped that pass. He had a really good Shrine Bowl week.
Yeah.
He was one of the practice players of the week. There were 2 wide receivers.
He mentioned that with Happer yesterday.
He was one of them. He's got great size. He's 6'4".
He's going to have all the measurables.
He's going to have all the measurables. Yeah. Can he get to a combine? I don't know. He's got some medical thing too that you can check on. Will he get a combine invite? He is ranked somewhere in the 28 to 32 range, and an average of 32 wide receivers go.
There you go. So literally right at the end.
He's got a chance to go for sure. Then undrafted free agent. I think Ben Scott's an undrafted free agent. Goes there. Priority 1. Not somebody that goes in for a tryout. Yeah. But then the tryout guys, I think, are Mazuka, MJ Sherman, and Brian Buschini. And then I'm curious about Jamal Banks. I don't know. He's got the size, not going to run an incredible great time. He's
going to be slower.
I wonder about him. I think he's an undrafted free agent, but he might be a tryout guy.
Yeah. So if you were to guess, would you say 3?
I would say 4.
You would say that Nash does get drafted.
I would guess the over that either Isaiah Nair or Nash get drafted. One of those two guys to give you 4.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's just still wild when you think about how you viewed it before the season versus how you view it now.
Well, you think about it. I thought Banks and Nair would both have great years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought at least one of those offensive linemen that would be a 6-year guy would actually, because he's got all those starts, go to the NFL. Mm-hmm. And then you had guys get hurt and, Ben Hart's there. And I just thought that guys would have, I thought MJ Sherman actually would have a really good year.
Yeah.
Because I knew he was going to play more outside rush. I knew how young they were there. I thought maybe he could have an exceptional 4 or 5 sacks or something.
Mm-hmm.
Give him a chance.
By the way, multiple people pointing out it's Baskin Robbins that always finds
I'm
out.
sorry.
It's not Dairy Queen.
I apologize. I don't
even know this is a reference.
I screwed that.
What's that
That's
a reference?
Ant-Man.